Ask us some questions now.
All right. So my questions, we talked about identity, right? And when you lose that identity, what kind of hit me was it's layered, right? So identify as a soldier and as a leader, and so as I go through these last 2 years, I'm peeling layers away. So I don't know if there's a question in that, but there's a realization.
Well, yeah, and I think it's both, and I think that's such a great point because like you said, you're losing an identity, but not really, because we never lose anything. It just changes form. And so in our teaching, and what we look at is the 7 areas of life. There's spiritual, mental, vocational, financial, social, family, and physical, right? And so we're always operating within these 7 areas. And so during your time in the military, vocationally, you had a lot of resource in that, and that was a big part of your identity because you had leadership there. And then you leave the military, and you no longer have leadership in that form. But just like you said, what occurred for you in the 2 years since you've been out is that has actually moved over to yourself. So you are leading yourself now, and so you were leading the many, and now you're leading the one.
You strip that away, and then, like I said before, you can you start to see who you are, and you don't have to have a persona of who people, because it's always been very important. Like, what do my people think of me? Like, what do the men think? Because if they don't have a good, we listen. We listen to that chatter. Hey, Major Lovengood, he is the worst commander I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm the worst commander they've had. There's got to be guys that are worse than me. But so, we listen to that because it matters. And I think maybe some of the people that can squash that, maybe good for them. But I always cared what people have thought about me. And so you try to put on, I want to call it a show, but you want to put your best face forward, and you want you want your interaction with people to matter, and it does matter,
Of course.
But it does.
It's hard
absolutely.
to put, day after day, when you have a shitty day at home, or my kids are acting crazy, and I can't, I can't control my own household to put on that face and come in the organization. I have to be a certain way because we always say leaders live in a fishbowl because everybody's always watching you. So now, who cares what I do? I could run, without my clothes on at the farm in Swanton. Nobody cares. Some of my neighbors might care, but
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah,
Go full circle.
But, if I did
Full
that,
circle. The polarities of Australia.
it would have been in the news. So that was an epiphany for me. That finally you strip those things away and you start getting at the core who who are you.
Isn't it interesting how, and what I've discovered, like in my later years of life too, how we actually evolve, and we go through these phases of where we're actually there to actually serve the many, and then it once that void is actually complete, then we come back to serving sense of self. So this is like the law of the one to many. You can research that, and we start to see that anytime that we have a value on something that we're actually attached to, so like a label as a leader, that's our purpose. We want to be able to serve and bring that to the many, right? So, but once that void is actually complete, it's actually filled, so therefore it has no value in that form. And then we evolve to the next thing that generally brings you back to the one. And so therefore the leadership, which was going outwards, now actually comes inwards. And this is a universal law that continues over time. But when you can bring it to your awareness, then what would be ideal is to have a balance of both, so that there is in leadership within you and then leadership without, like to the many. So you have a balance of the one and the many.
And that's one of the things that's I feel is so important for people to know and understand, and it's an exercise that we do here. When they are transitioning from one career to the next, or when you have a dramatic life change, it's really important to sit down and bring into your awareness where those traits have shifted to.
Are there certain times that when the veterans come, depending on where they are in their lives, that they're more easily impacted or more easily able to see, I guess, the why behind? There's a lot of whys.
Yeah.
Why did I get like this? How did I end up in those situations?
We tend, so the people, and like I hate labeling things, but when you think in terms of in the best shape and in the worst shape, the people that come here and make the most dramatic changes are the ones that are perceived to be in the worst shape. And I've had often people ask me, why do you think that is? And I think, one thing I see time and time again is when you get beat down so bad in your life that you just have no expectation. You're completely unattached to an outcome. That is when you're the most moldable. So when people come here and they're like, well, I've tried everything else, this isn't going to work, I have no expectation of this working, that's when their mind, and I don't know if you can back me up on this or speak to it at all, but it's when they have let go of the attachment to outcome that they can receive something so dramatically life-changing that they'll never be the same.
And that links back to unrealistic expectations. When you've got to that point that it's not working for you to be attached to any specific form of outcome.
Yeah.
This can be a little spiritual and a little abstract to actually comprehend. But when we do go deep into it, we actually will take you to that point that we get you to see that there is both benefits and drawbacks to anything that we actually do. So therefore it becomes, well, if that happens, that happens. If that happens, that happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But what tends to happen in that place is that we access a source of wisdom and an innate knowing in the true sense of purpose or direction that is true for you, totally true for you. And it's not being projected upon you from outside expectations. It's not being injected also from outside people putting it into you. It comes from in here, that you know that this is your sense of purpose. And this is the pathway for you to actually start to travel.
Well, I think that, in the military, when you receive treatment for PTSD, a lot of it is probably metric outcomes, right? Are you cured? Are they better? And I think, and this is just speaking for myself, having received treatment for PTSD while I was in the military, you have to be very careful because, I understood early on that, when I returned to work, a lot of times nobody knew I went and received treatment because even in a culture that we say that it was okay to receive treatment, maybe it was, but there's still a perception out there, and especially being in a leadership position, oh wow, he's receiving treatment, and then well, is he better now? Because I don't want to put him in a position of authority or give him a promotion if maybe he's not where we want him to be.
We just had this conversation the other day, and it's really about our belief here is loving your PTSD, finding out how your PTSD is actually serving you, because Kelly has PTSD, I have PTSD, you have but think about it. Have you ever met anyone that doesn't have some form of PTSD? I have not. I've never met anyone that has not been traumatized, ever.
Right.
So we all have PTSD, and that's my belief. And when you seek traditional treatment, what that treatment does is it tries to remove something from you. It tries to take away perceptions. It tries to take away symptoms. It can sometimes be based on an avoidance tactic. If you feel like you're going to get panicky, go do an art project, go sing a song, go, whatever. Avoid. And so why it's different here and our concept is different is stop trying to get rid of anything that's happened to you and just change your perspective on it. Find out how it's serving you.
Right.
And when you can find out how that trauma and how those symptoms have actually benefited you, you become liberated from it, and it no longer has any power.
Because it becomes our norm. I definitely
becomes your story.
My wife knows me better than anyone, obviously. So she's obviously seen the dark places that it can take me, but also she understands, how it's changed me. Not necessarily for the bad. It's who I am now. But the perception that the civilian world has sometimes. I had to laugh here a while back when we were out in the community. I won't name any names, and there was a comment made about the veteran living next to me He might be off his rocker.
He has the PTSD.
Yeah, he has the PTSD. And
It's like a disease.
And I'm standing right there,
It's like
and I didn't say anything because it didn't bother me
It's like you have the plague.
to the
or
degree
something.
where I was going to say anything. But yeah, it bothered me because that is obviously a perception that that people have, and kind of ill-placed. But
I don't think it's ill-placed. If we look at the charge that brought up, I can speak to that, is that any time that we have a charge that we're, like that kind of bothered me, it got me a little pissed, it got me a little stressed about it, is that we haven't learned to love that within ourselves, right? So it goes back to Amanda talking about the more that we can learn to love our PTSD and see how it actually serves us, then we actually rise above these emotions, reactions that tend to happen. Because anything that actually happens to us or for us is of service to us, of value.
Always.
Exactly. It's just how you choose to actually view it and move with it. I don't ever say move through it or from it, because you move with it. You want to flow with it and look at how it is actually serving you. And interestingly enough is, if you look at the true cause and effect of why we tend to stay in the label of PTSD, there's many different aspects of that, but I tend to see that there are secondary benefits to actually staying within that label. So I would go in and look at what potentially they are, and they're still of service to you. I'm not trying to get rid of them. That is just bringing them conscious to what's actually sticking to that.
There's one that is always brought up, I think, when you're talking to other vets is when we go into certain social situations, we break down a room. So let's say we're going to go into a crowded movie theater. Where are you going to sit? You're going to sit near an exit. You're already looking at points of egress. I mean, you're looking at where people are sitting. We're going to sit in the back, because we want to have full view of what's going on.
And you come up with a little plan just in case something would happen. I'm going to go here, then here.
And I had a counselor ask me, well, why do you do that? To try to get me to think about it. I said, well, I already know why I do it. Okay, well, what are the chances of that happening? Well, I know they're less than if I don't do it. And so I'm going to continue to do it, because it's just, I'm not going to try to break me of that habit, because unfortunately we live in a world that it potentially could happen. Now, yes, I understand statistically it's probably not going to happen, but guaranteed when I walk in a room it's less than, because I'm at least prepared for something.
Right.
And like you said, that's the new me, and that's not going to change.
But how is that serving you, and how is it serving the people you're with?
Well, I conceal carry, that's a whole nother topic for discussion, but I feel safer in that situation, and I know that to some degree the people in the room should be safer because I'm there.
Yeah, and why is that important? Because we all need to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
So by having that trait about you, it's actually helping everyone that's around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every trait that we express, repress, suppress is of service.
Right.
Totally.
But just like you said, they try, some therapy is to remove that, to change that.
But why would
behavior.
you want to
But
change
it's
that?
not, it's not an outward behavior that's negatively affecting anyone. It's something internally that I do.
It's just a behavior. It's just a practice. It's a practice, and it's not good or bad until someone puts a perception on it. And, look at, I'm going to get a little controversial here, okay? Look at the church shooting. That gentleman probably did what you do. And because of it, he's alive, and so are a bunch more people, and a perpetrator is not alive.
Right.
So why is that a bad thing?
Oh, it's not.
It's just a stigma. It's just a perception that it's bad. And if no one did that, there would be more people right now that are not alive.
But I like what you said as far as not trying to remove something.
Yeah.
We're not. We're forever changed to some degree.
Of course.
But we all change over time, and we're all
Everyone
impacted
changes.
by things that go on in our life, and good, bad, and different. It's all going to change.
Well, and look at it this way: what would be a drawback to you, having never experienced the things that cause you to help people feel safe, right?
Yeah.
So we can look at both sides either way. There's drawbacks to you actually scoping out the movie theatre, and there's benefits to you actually doing the same thing. We can find both on both sides when we choose to actually look. But I was listening and hearing that it really does come down to a form of judgment. Like the number one thing is that we are being judged from outside or judging ourselves from within. And the word good or bad, which to me is a polarity, it's a duality. And there is actually ratios within that. And the further we actually step out into one side, we're becoming disassociated from the middle of ourselves.
So it's not good or bad, it just is.
It
just is.
And so when we can come from that place and we can see both sides, then we have a balanced mind. We have a balanced physiology. And then the emotional vibration and frequency comes back to more of a closer to a static state. I mean, everything in the universe is constantly moving. We're only going to have like a small component that is not moving. So the wave frequency within ourselves becomes more finer. But the more we actually disassociate here, the wave becomes a lot more dense. And that's when we're operating from our limbic system. But when we come back to the center, we're opening up the prefrontal cortex, integrating with the limbic system, down through into the body, and we connect the heart to the head. And then that we come from a place of gratitude and love from there.
Mm-hmm. And what that means for the people that do this work is, often they'll say, I've been in this situation and I'm reactive every single time. And then after they have these awarenesses, they'll go into a similar situation and they won't even realize until after it's over, I didn't react. I didn't react. And then they become sustainably changed.
And again, resilience is actually born from there. Born from that place. You become unwavering, but not unemotional, not unfeeling. You're able to still feel and observe, but you're not actually acting or reacting to it. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is a beautiful place to be.
Well, it's because it's hard to feel, because that stems from the disassociation. I have removed myself. Like I always tell everybody, it's like an outer body experience. I operate better in some degree as a leader by not feeling.
Of course.
Because, well, at least in the military, I can somewhat be empathetic, but it's mission,
yeah.
right? It's mission,
service
mission,
before
mission.
self.
Men in mission, but really mission. And so, by removing that emotionality, I operate better. And at least we think we do. I don't know. That's probably another discussion.
Yeah. But it's a good one.
Yeah. But as we go back into, like, nothing's ever missing, it's just changed form, right? You can never actually evolve past the feeling body. So in your point, when you're actually on a mission in combat, what would you actually tap into to actually make a decision?
Well, hopefully, you're tapping in on, the way you've done it in training.
But what was the intrinsic thing that you went to first?
It's emotion.
Instinct.
Instinct and
gut
emotion.
feeling.
Yeah, exactly. So the feeling is just there. So I'm just going to awaken you to that. Is that most human beings are going to rely on what they actually feel first, because that's the first form of feedback to us to make a decision in our physiology. And like when we have it come from the gut, it's actually an imbalanced perspective that comes, right? But when we know how to tap into intuition, which is the highest form of feeling, and I'm guessing that's what you were experiencing, being such a high-level leader in the work that you were doing, and having the achievements that you did achieve in that, that's your still feeling body there, but it's become so refined because of your level of consciousness that you got to.
Mm-hmm.